Yo, what's up, world? This is Dane Tomas, and you're listening to the Dane Tomas podcast. Every week, I talk to experts, weirdos, new friends, and old ones about everything from magic to business to creativity and human awakening. So, strap yourself in, lay back and relax, cause we're heading straight for the black hole. Take 437. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Dane.
This is my friend Jonathan. We're going to talk about like souls and the Aquarian age and leadership and doing things in groups and that sort of shit. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I hope this call gives you a window into the well-spoken and also the clunky, combative parts of us that can come up sometimes when we speak about things.
Yeah. So there's a humorous side to this for me and Jonathan in that in the communities we've been part of, particularly Haydn Temple and Ister and other things like that, there's this sort of idea of moving towards operating as a soul group, which we're both on board for to a degree, but within our little group, I have often played the character like, nah, the individual, and Jonathan's like, no, man, like the group. And neither of those positions really truly sums us up. It's just that we have often played that polarity in the group that we're in. And what's humorous or what's relevant for me is, since I've been away from you, and I've been in situations where, I'm holding this energy of, I just want this group that I'm holding to be able to merge into a frequency of love and synergy and oneness. And I found myself probably for the first time really genuinely holding that energy. And I can reflect back and go, fuck, I was the person who was not willing to merge into the group and was therefore holding up that process. And right now I'm the guy who's like craving this level of intimacy and the magic that can come from that. And so it's almost like I've been getting a taste of, this is what that fucking guy was talking about all the time, Like, guys, we can get through this. It's okay that you and you have a thing, but let's hold space for that and see what magic comes from that. And even to the point of, I already said this before, but I just had 4 of us living here that are all part of this community, and we got to practice this in a really domestic setting, which is really cool. And then everyone left on last Sunday, and I had a group call with my blood family, like my parents and my sister, and there was a bit of tension breaking out. And I ended up going, okay, we're going to take turns. Mom, I really want to hear what you're feeling right now, And I kind of ended up facilitating like a sharing circle for my family, because I'd just been so in this energy of like, if I hold a frequency of love and everyone gets to bring their pieces, eventually this thing wants to come together and merge, and something else wants to come from it. So that's what put it in my head to have a chat with you. Whereas a lot of the other people I'm talking to on this podcast are like, maybe they're a finance expert or they're doing entrepreneurial stuff or whatever, So I guess a good place to start, because we go anywhere, would be like, how would you say the difference of this Aquarian idea of leadership is to the world that we live in today? Like what's this thing that you and I are going to try to talk about compared to what people might know from working in a corporation or building their own company or, I don't know, wherever else you do leadership?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like one of the main things is like, it feels like there's almost a level of, to some degree, an extreme level of individuation. I think it has to happen in soul groups where, and by that I feel it's like the really embodied deep layers of consent that happens with each individual actually being willing to go on this journey of being part of a group soul or fusing with others. I feel like that kind of leadership is sort of signing up to this core principle that it no longer becomes so much about us, or it's no longer about us as much as we thought it was. And so I feel like, generally the basic thing of many turning to the one, or kind of what you see happening now as we clunkily kind of figure out the shared power thing of like, who's going to be the next person to speak, or who's going to do the thing, and so I feel like it's basically bringing in a deeper union with the mystery and deep principles around universal love, and particularly like, how do a group of individuals relate to the whole, and also relate with each other as the whole. So how do we as individuals relate to the earth, but also relate to each other as the earth? And it feels like a total rewiring of basically being able to constantly ride this bridge between the deeply personal, the transpersonal, and the universal, and kind of developing a new language for being able to be these really in tune instruments as human beings that are able to pop between all three of those things all the time. So, I feel like, ironically, I feel like I'm much more in I said this earlier, but I feel as connected to the Aquarian age as ever, but yet the parts of me that have been so comfortable dancing in transpersonal and universal la la land, which I still love doing, a part of me is deeply enmeshed in the personal right now. And so I do feel there's a place of evolution, in the place of like being able for two forms and human beings, instead of like, hey, I have to go lead this thing or do this thing or step into this role. And so the things in here that are really the core of who I am and what I'm really holding tender and sacred to me, it's like, I think the days of kind of leaving our shit at the door when we go into work, or leaving those parts behind when we go up on stage to lead a speech about something, I feel like those are the parts that are going to have to start leading, because they no longer like belong to us, and we have to hide them and only reveal them in certain circumstances. But I feel like the places of us that actually totally contradict what our public persona is, that that portals open with one other, two others, where we can go to those places. I feel like the power of shared power and leadership, that's where like the gold lies. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of one of the ideas that I associate with some experiences with you that we've had is this idea of the group gaze, and to give people who maybe are really unfamiliar with what the fuck we're talking about, which could be a lot of people. So the last 2 weeks, I had two friends staying over who we've been part of these communities together. So there's a knowledge, there's a language, there's a general willingness to play at a higher level of group intimacy than you would have just with two random people around your house, for sure. And what this might look like is like, we're at dinner, and dinner's turned into like sharing circle every night. It evolved into like, okay, after dinner we have a share with the group to find out where everyone is at, because we're living together and we're doing our own thing. We're doing some stuff together. So we didn't start as having, we're going to do an Aquarian experiment. It was just like, I just want these guys to be with us right now, But it quickly became like, hey, Tyrant, what's going on with you? No, man, I'm fine. And it's like the three of us would turn to him and be like, no, what's really going on there? And it'd be this kind of like, okay, fine. And so there's this benchmark of like, on some level, the four of us have signed up for total intimacy, total transparency. You don't get to have a mask on and have there's some emotional thing done beneath the surface, or you're going to hide half of yourself because you're in a bad space today and you don't want to tell anyone that. It's like there's an assumption amongst, and it was cool to do what you guys are doing there at High End in a little microcosm of force, because it's so observable in such it's like a smaller petri dish, And it was like, oh, there's a lot of the same stuff that we are doing here all of a sudden. We didn't plan it, but it just seemed to be what was wanted. And there's underlying assumptions that we've all sort of on some level signed up for, which is like, I'm okay for all of me to be seen, as a basic thing. It's like all of me. So even if we're just having dinner or we're talking about some surface stuff, it's like, yeah, but what's going on with you? And the person might try to put up a basic level of, no, don't worry about it, that's my thing. But there's this understanding that I guess that your private business isn't your private business anymore, and like
totally.
and you're probably one of the people who broke that boundary with me of, like, say, Mia and I were having some argument, and in the normal world, you know, a couple's having an argument, that's the couple's business, you know? And whereas we'd be in a van and, like, you'd be there and Clara would be there and it'd be like, okay, Mia, so what's happening for you right now? And Dane, what is that, you know, and it almost looks a bit like therapy if you didn't know the kind of mystery school circle sort of vibe. At first, it almost might look like a therapist, which I guess is a form of people go to see a therapist for their couple for some group gaze of, like, now, John, how does it make you feel when she says you're a shit in bed, you know? And it's like, actually, that makes me angry. You know, but the truth comes out because of this extra lens, you know, it's you can't hide the same way that in your couple, I can do what I can do, she does what she does, and there's no one external to bust those patterns. Whereas when there's 3, when there's 4, there would always be someone centered enough and stable enough and loving enough to go, hey, Jonathan, I feel like today you're not really here with us. What's going on? And then eventually it'd be like, wow, this is coming up for me. You know,
I feel like, no, like it's an interesting one, this topic of, like, you know, comparing it to therapy, because I feel like this is where the, and I feel like a lot of us are, I mean, fuck, like in my own life, and a lot of us are going through that here, where it's like, with relating, with the group gaze, with circles even, like how the line can get really blurry between, like, endless emotional processing and, like, these what feels like a million interventions a day of, like, gazing upon people, compared to actually, like, more subtle vibrations, and almost more just, like, giving awareness to, okay, even if you don't fully believe it, even if we don't have certain languages or muscles worked out, like, if we just keep coming back to this place of oneness, and just to, like, feel like what would it feel like if we just start to give awareness to the fact that, like, we all are part of the same being, that, you know, each of us are so focused on our own individual, like, incarnations and our soul journeys, but also there's a group being made up of many of us that's also trying to incarnate. And so I feel like the more an awareness is brought to those teachings, and you feel it happening around the world. It's like, look at Game of Thrones and Lost and The Sopranos, like, so much of media that's flowers through the last, like, 20 years is not just the myths and the narratives aren't more and more just about groups. Like, there's less of one protagonist and there's many, but also the creative process of how a lot of these scripts have been written, are being written by many. And you look at startup scenes, this idea of, like, a brainstorming room. I think that part of the shadow of group gaze is that, in circles and stuff, is that it becomes focused on, like, needing to fix dynamics, and I've held that pole a lot of, like, needing to keep digging until the root is figured out. And now I feel like I've almost stepped back a bit, and I'm more and more like, how to just give awareness to the group being in every moment, how to just give subtle awareness to the fact that this is happening. It's trying to bubble up through all of us. And so I feel like this burning that you're talking about between, like, the public and private, you know, you see it with the internet and this persona, that persona, that duality starting to crumble. And I feel like the more and more shit gets out of hand in the world in the next few years, people's ideas and protectors of where we can keep our public and private persona separate, it's just gonna get destroyed. I feel like it's gonna keep getting destroyed month by month now.
Mm-hmm. So many threads to go down with that. You know, like, I feel like I'm a big Gary Vaynerchuk fan, right? Who's probably one of the leading voices on internet entrepreneurship, you know? And it's interesting how I'm seeing a few leading entrepreneurs that I would not consider, like, spiritual initiates, but they're clearly very switched on to be leading what they're leading. Some of their language is starting to sound like flickers of Aquarian language, you know? And it even tiny things, but like Gary Vaynerchuk would say that, like, privacy died ages ago. Anyone who's still holding on to privacy has misunderstood what the internet is. You gave up your privacy a long time ago. It's gone. It's not like, oh, but I can pull down that photo. It's like, look, that's it's not that. You now, if you engage into this thing, it's like the eyes of the world are on you. We are basically unveiling everything. And one thing that has worked for me in my online entrepreneurial journey is I was never really that good of a professional anyway. You know, I didn't really do very well in the corporate world. I couldn't really show up in the right way. You know, if I would try to wear a nice shirt, it would always be kind of buckled up wrong. I would just be like, oh, I don't think I can put this mask on anyway. So to go the other way and be like, what if I just fucking bear everything? And which was super counterintuitive, but I had some mentors in sort of 2010, 2011 who were like, look, your wounds, your dark side, the shit you hate about yourself, if you can throw that into your marketing copy, if you can reveal that on a camera in real time, you have showed up as you, and that's going to shine because everyone else is trying to be like the shiny internet entrepreneur or the life coach or whatever. So it's weird that in this, there's this capitalist technical thing swirling that is so huge, that is very individualistic, but I feel like even it is pulling the world towards a singularity, you know, and it's pulling the world to a sort of an Aquarian reality in a different way. So it's interesting. Some of that stuff is going on. What was I going to say? I was going to ask you something. Do you have any thoughts on that, on what's happening in the world currently, of how it plugs in?
Yeah. I mean, I feel, like a lot of it feels like there's, I don't know, the next 5 or 10 years, like it feels like how humans relate to the planet, even the concept of human beings relating to the planet. I mean, I think that, you see it happening in so many ways with like, plant medicine communities and things that are natural to this world that humans have always been connected to, that have been lying dormant, that we're finding more and more intimate connections to. I think humans' connections to the natural world, but particularly like a waking up of our inherent origin and almost, I'd say, responsibility of how this instrument is actually designed, and how maybe our hearts are designed in ways that have been so muted of being able to deeply feel one another and deeply feel the planet as a living, breathing being. And I do feel like the global the global tribe of Earth, like our global understanding of intimacy in our relationships and the political systems and in how workplaces are set up, I feel like intimacy on Earth is changing. And I feel like, yes, there's intimacy of deep relating and sexual intimacy and emotional intimacy, but I feel like what's coming with love and power and all the conditioning and ways we've been designed to basically know everything about everything, and even when it comes to creativity or global decisions, I feel like that the Earth is like, Corona feels like only the beginning. I feel like something's going to keep shaking us until we get really fucking comfortable with not fucking knowing what comes next. And with actually, I feel like a lot of this language feels very vague and strange now, of like being listening to the center and listening to the mystery. But the truth is, whether we're here or not, I feel like evolution is going to keep happening and going to keep prowling through time and space. And I feel like even what's happening around Haydn right now, with like flights getting canceled, this and that, and every moment and every choice not coming from like the clever 7 or 8 different paths we could take, but actually a moment to moment response to what's now and what's alive between us. And I feel that's going to keep pushing us and challenging us to actually responding to the planet in a time of crisis feels no different. So sometimes I'm like looking around what's happening, and I'm like, this is probably no different in some ways than what would happen, how we respond in a time of ecstasy. Crisis versus ecstasy, they demand a level of presence that's actually quite similar.
Yeah, totally. And it's, for me, amongst this whole thing, there's been quite a bunch of bliss states of like, fuck yeah, it's getting disrupted. And not even it, like I'm getting disrupted enough to have to be like in the creative flow or in the honesty of like, well, what's today about? Just forgetting every plan that I have. What does today feel like it's about? And it's like, I think it's about like movement and writing and looking at the sky, I think is what today is about. It's like, cool. I probably wouldn't have done that if everything was going according to plan. You know, it would have been a Wednesday, and on a Wednesday I do that, which I still do enjoy a lot of that stuff. But and it's the same as what I'm seeing again with the entrepreneurial thing. Like the people that respond creatively to disruption are going to thrive. You know, it's like, you know, depending on the situations and how hard people are holding on to stuff, it does seem to have a lot to do with how much misery they're going to go through. You know, I have friends who like own venues and stuff like that. And it's like, fuck, this is not good for you guys. No one can go there. So if you're going to be like, nah, we're just going to weather the storm and hold on to it, versus like, you know what, let's take this as a sign to let that go. And you know, I've watched the people who like, they have to go through their mind of like, yeah, but what about bankruptcy, or what about this, or what about that structure? And it's just like, and then others who are like, guess it's a new thing. And you can see this lightness of like, you know, the humor of the apocalypse versus like, fuck, everything is, I had it just how I wanted it, you know? And it's like, well, it's a reset. It's like musical chairs. It's like, and change. And it's like, fuck, I just had a good one, you know? Or, yay, I love this game.
It's like all I can imagine is that literally everything, like everything, whether it's relationships or jobs or family or whatever, I feel like the rug is going to keep getting pulled out from underneath us again and again and again and again. And that excites me. And I feel like one of the things it's demanding is, you know, which really pertains a lot to our friendship too, is creativity, which I feel like you could substitute that with power or love, but creativity, like, I don't think is going to belong to just like the artist archetype anymore. I feel like there's an infinite source of creativity, you know, whether that's the soul, whatever you want to call it. There's a crazy, wild source of creativity that lives in human beings. And I feel like, you know, the individual that is the artist or me, whatever, like it's very scary to sit down and open that and start to channel that, especially when it starts to come from places that are much bigger than just like, oh, I want to write a book or a poem about X, Y, and Z. But what I'm finding on a personal level lately is I just feel like empty on a level of creativity, and not like sad empty, just like I don't know where like this shit's coming from anymore. But it's no longer from like the places up here that my personality or my ego would want it to come from. And it feels like a schizophrenic dance of being in that intimacy, all really excited about that, but also really terrified about that, of being in the not knowing together and not knowing literally what's going to happen moment to moment. But I feel like that idea of not knowing feels like the worst thing any one leader could say to a group of people. And yet I feel like we as a whole are getting tired of being made false promises and given plans and strategies to guarantee some sort of safety, when really like there's a collective upwelling of being in the unknown together, and actually being like, okay, we've become so fucking clever and smart where regardless of what community we're in or where we are on earth, like everyone is more or less feeling that something is changing in evolution, and we've become so minding developed enough to know that it's happening. And so how do we just surrender to the fact that it's happening now? Because I think the more we try to know, the planet is going to keep like slapping us across the face more and more, so we know less and less and less, just at the times when we think we know more and more.
That's interesting. I wrote a poem this morning called "All This Uncertainty Is Making My Dick Hard," and it's
it is.
And I guess, you know, it wasn't really a logical poem. It was just like a very feeling poem. But I guess it's like there is a part of me that is excited by the mystery and the rearrangement, you know? And it's like, ooh, there's new everything. There's new opportunities, you know? It's interesting though, because I feel like there is, in my world, there is a place for mind and organization, particularly around handling the survival basics. Like, it's super easy to have this conversation in my nice house with the lighting on and fucking food in the cupboards, and like, you know, I can go have a hot bath later, versus like, I don't know, the opposite of that, where it's like, fuck, you know, when it's uncertainty down to the level of where am I going to sleep, what am I going to eat, there is a different level of a whole bunch of shit that's activated, unless you're really fucking completely surrendered to like literally the moment to moment, to the point where your animal isn't even stressing, you know. That's a different reality than like, cool, I'm going to be probably good no matter what, you know. I just have enough faith in my who and what I am. But, you know, if I get this virus and get sick and die or whatever, that's the thing. But like, beyond that, you know, there's just a sense of resourcefulness and anchoredness. And so I think it was always kind of one of my debates with the personality versus soul kind of polarity, is like, it's easy to do soul if your personality's kind of graduated to like, you know, it's good at life. Then there's something to actually hand over to the mystery, versus like, well, I'm a fucking failure and I don't know what I'm doing. And it's easy to surrender, but what will, you know, there's not, it's almost like you need to have something to put on the altar for the ritual to be worth it, I think, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's easy to have a highly clever soul that can work with the personality to be very clever in the world, and it's easy to have a very clever personality that can help to slightly manipulate this. So I feel like it goes both ways to some degree, and I feel that the core of all of it is like this mentality of everyone fending for themselves. You know, I know there are parts in me now that I'm like, one part of me could easily dance through group and I know there's a part of me that is like totally here for group, is totally here to weave in group and help develop new technologies for group intimacy. And for the last year or two, you know, I was skipping over the part of me that knows that like it's highly devotional, highly committed, loves being in deep relating, and that there are places that we all protect in our heart that like are much easier to start with one other and then go to 3 and then go to 4, as opposed to just like, you know, it's like going into a sharing circle and just like revealing the depths of our being. Like it's quite the process, I think, as a human being to do that. And so I feel like that's the beauty and also the vulnerability, but I feel it's probably where a beautiful collective edge is right now. You know, when I think of my parents living in this suburb in the States, it's like, okay, what are baby steps that groups of people, whether they already feel like a group or not, could do to generate more intimacy between one another? Like, what would happen in a suburb with separate houses and separate lives if they had a meeting like once every 2 weeks and opened up a little part of their hearts, you know? So I think it's like, there are already group souls and group beings around the world wanting to wake up, and every individual is going to have a different level of readiness in terms of what that means. But I feel like the more the collective awareness leads to those places, it's like, what are the baby steps of more intimacy and coming together that we can all take as human beings? And I feel that because it's what's happening in our evolution, the more that we start doing that on an unembodied levels, the more of a domino effect it can have. The more groups start coming together more and more around the world and being more intimate with each other, and just revealing more of who we actually are and like what's actually going on here most of the time, you know?
Yeah, I think the first place I ever saw anything like this was probably men's circles, you know, particularly when a men's circle is good, when it's potent, when there's one or more potent people in there that are sort of holding strong intention and strong, I guess they're holding love, but they're also holding kind of a fierceness as well. So a lot of the nonsense, all the surface stuff burns away quite quickly, you know, when we do like an 8-week commitment or whatever, you know, when there was some strong 8-week commitment, David Davis in men's group type of stuff when I first moved to Byron, you know, and it would be like, there'd be eye gazing, rich stuff before we sat in circle. There'd be a few things to dissolve, a bit of personality, and then, you know, some really clear agreements of to what part of ourselves to share from. And I remember being stunned by how deep the intimacy of that group of men got after like 3 weeks. I was like, fuck, I know this guy. You know, I felt this guy at a really deep level beyond facts about his life or whether he's married or whatever. It was like, you know, I felt his pain. I seen him unveil. I seen him completely vulnerable. And I think for me, that probably planted the seed of like, you can achieve cool things sitting in a circle. You know, it was like this like sense of like, something happens and there's a magic to the circle itself. And I think the gaze part of it was like, I know that he's watching me and that guy's got a lot of integrity. So I'm not going to be full of shit today because he's going to see straight through me anyway. So I might as well just cut to the chase, you know? And yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I think the other place I've seen it most is creative circles. I have a friend, Atlas, who runs something called Open World Theatre that I've told that sounds a lot like sort of other improv movements and stuff, but it's really about dialoguing with life and breaking away from any particular mechanism. So it's really a freestyle theatrical container, which doesn't feel as much like acting. It feels more like channeling whatever the fuck wants to come in. And, you know, if there's a scene, you might just join in and be like, well, I'm a security guard. And it's like, well, okay, everyone has to go with it. But something in that I've seen is that, we're now in a dialogue with life force, and the life force just comes from wherever it wants to come from. And if we're all listening, and we've had it in big circles at Hyden and wherever else, where it's like, fuck, it's that guy's turn to talk. And we all just kind of look at the person and they're kind of like, what? And we're just like, come on, you're holding it. It's like, I don't fucking know. Well, fine. It's this, you know, and we all can feel the group knew that was the spot, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like this is some of the stuff that excites me the most. It's probably the places where I kind of freeze sometimes because, you know, the old voices in me that are like, this is a new human collective muscle and how do we blah, blah, blah. But then, you know, continuing to draw awareness to these places and practice them, it's like, a lot of the language I feel of shared power, of shared purpose, shared creativity, which I feel like more or less is all the same thing. You know, and I feel like a lot of this plays out of like being a highly conscious, open-hearted individual and meeting other conscious, open-hearted individuals and like getting really excited about like, yeah, we should work together. We should write a thing together. And, the rapidness of how many creative seeds come between human beings all the time, and how so much is forced. Like love can be forced, creativity between people can be forced, and how a lot of times we can impose our will on what we think needs to happen or what we can make happen in order to feel more safe or more stable or something. And so I feel like continuing to tune in to group language, which is, you know, what you're talking about, of like sitting in a room full of people and feeling where the charge is. It's like the leader is so, I think deep down, it's so moment to moment. It's like, okay, how do we tune into the vibration of whose heart is breaking? And then that person leads with, you know, a heart-based circle. And like, how do we listen to where power and where love and where creativity is moving? And if we start to listen to that, it's going to mean that circles and how we communicate, it's going to be less and less around like whose emotional body or whose mental intelligence is dominating. It's like developing a level of selflessness and surrendering what the fuck we think is important in every moment, so we can actually listen to where power and where love want to move in a group of people. And then knowing that that's, when we can listen to that, that's going to reveal purpose. That's going to reveal creativity between us and connect us to something bigger. But it's not, you know, it's going to completely shatter the old resumes and the the how we do purpose and how we do all of this, I feel like the myth of purpose, the myth of love, these are all narratives and myths that are important, but they've been written a certain way, and I think the way that those are written are now getting turned on their head.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been a strong adherent of the linear purpose, the David Data-esque type of purpose, and more of late, I've been sort of tuning into like Buckminster Fuller and people like that, and it's this kind of sense of like, and listen to Robert Kiyosaki the other day talking about he did a bunch of work with Bucky Fuller, and it's the question is like, what does God want done? So and this idea that like you can't really see your purpose, in the same way that a bee doesn't know that its purpose is pollinating plants. It's just like, I'm cruising over to this plant, but from the God level, we're like, we need the bees. It's very important that they do this thing because that's how this whole thing stays alive. No bee, as far as I know, is thinking, yeah, I got to pollinate 17 trees today. It's just doing its little bee thing. But the purpose is clearly unfolding. And, I had a friend die about a month ago, and he and I had a lot of conversations about purpose. And sometimes he was kind of saying he doesn't know if he's on it, he's not on it, or he's on it, or whatever. And seeing his life from its completion, there's this sense of like, fuck, this guy was his purpose. Like he was fucking loving and bringing magic to a lot of people just in this intimate, mysterious way that it doesn't look like I'm building my online business or I'm doing, the things that were around us that look like that guy's got a lot of purpose. What I seen with him is like, fuck, you were just spreading love and opening people, as far as I can tell, like every fucking day. And I didn't know about any of it until his life is complete and all these stories are coming out. And I'm just like, purpose is not what I thought it was. Or there's levels of it. There is definitely mentally identified purpose. And then there's this you as a cell in the organism, which I wonder can you even not be on purpose from that level? Like it's doing its thing and you're either surrendered to it or you're not, I suppose.
Yeah, I feel like what you're saying is really tied into freedom, actually. And like we had a little temple last night, and I was asked the question, what does freedom mean to you? And I forget exactly what I said, but I've been feeling more and more lately, particularly with things you're saying about the bee, and particularly with nature and the natural world, that like if you watch birds or bees or what, like they're not stopping to have conversations with each other to make sure like everything's good and they feel okay inside to go like they're just being. And I feel like that's, for me, that's freedom. It's actually like, what would that look like if the human kingdom and the animal kingdom and the vegetable kingdom, like if all of us were so interconnected, where we were just letting each other be and unfold exactly who we are and what we are in every moment, and like what would purpose look like and what would love look like if that was the case. And for me, that is like the core essence of this new kind of freedom, like soul freedom that's coming. And I feel we do stop along the way so much. Like there are so many things and systems and structures that we've created that inhibit our freedom, but I feel like everything that you're saying and a lot of what you stand for with incredible systems and structures, I feel like creating the structure and system is one part, but then I feel like being open to that being destroyed for the next one to be born again and again and again, which is just happening anyway as part of our evolution. I feel that's a huge piece of what's happening on the earth right now.
There's a lot of curiosity in me around like, what is a system that is in harmony with change and with life force, and what is a system that is in resistance? And because at the beginning of this year there's this whole Saturn Pluto thing, and I was like, fuck, does that mean everything that I'm doing is going to get fucked? Are all the systems that I'm building just going to get fucked? And my belief so far is like, no, only the rigid ones, only the stale ones, only the non-adaptive systems, only the systems that are in support of a frequency that is no longer valid. you know, and as an individual, you might be wrong about which ones they are. So there's still this precariousness of like, well, you know, assume that any system could be removed at any point, but also have trust that system or the system of the whole thing is constantly emergent. You know, there's new stuff emerging through the old stuff. So it's not really, you know, even the idea of destruction is a little bit polarized. You know, it's like destruction and creation are going together. So, you know, like there was a cool quote of this Robert Kiyosaki thing I was watching last night, and it's basically like everyone in the industrial era is going to get crushed right now, because the way he's reading it, which is kind of, I linked to Aquarius a little bit, is like, yes, the information age has been creeping in, but right now we're officially passing into the information age, and the industrial age is dying. That's a very capitalistic read, right, of what's happening. But I liked it because it's like, you know, on the information systems level, all that's happening right now is upgrading of feedback and information. You know, like, oh, it's Xavier just wandering around like the sexy caveman. It, like, you know, what when this thing started to hit, my kind of the part of my brain that is the innovative part of my entrepreneurial, if you like, was like, oh, this is indication that any business model built on like face-to-face, traveling the world, passports, flying around in planes, it's gone. It's a bad idea. It was already, and what I saw in that moment was it was already a bad idea for a while, but there was nothing to force me to recognize the inefficiency of it. You know, like it was like, really, you're going to fly around the world to teach someone a thing, and you're going to use how much jet fuel and spend how much money and book a building, and you're going to make everyone else fly to that building? Like, that's the old world. And it was just like, fuck, we're just going to go online like that. And it's just like, oh, this on a business and technology level, this will be the year the world goes online. You know, like, even if, and it's like, well, but I'm a cafe. It's like, yeah, you're still going to go online. Otherwise you're done. And to me, that was a really interesting information level insight. Whereas on the human level, it's like, fuck, am I going to get a disease? Like, I can't go anywhere, you know, like there's this physical thing. But on the data exchange level, it's like, oh, we're going to speed up. You know, Australia might even fix their internet bandwidth. You know, who knows?
Which is amazing in a sense, because I remember, you know, I still have it. How I've had this cynicism with the internet and technology and social media and blah blah blah, and I always think of that what's that in 2001: A Space Odyssey, that robot HAL, and this, you know, this narrative of like the technology, or the technology that humans create becoming more intelligent than human beings, so it eventually overtakes us and destroys us, you know. And so I feel like what's beautiful that's happening is like, so much around the information age seems to be like the opposite seems to be happening now. The planet seems to be demanding that we get more comfortable with knowing less and less, but at the same time, you know, a big piece of technology, which was really the birth of it all, the internet, it's like, on one hand, there's this massive humbling of humanity happening, and on the other hand, like, what wants to remain will remain. And the same thing, you know, it's there in the teachings of like the Piscean age, the Aquarian age, that things will have to carry through in order for the next age to fully happen. And I feel like that's happening with the tech boom and the information age. It's like the internet, which has served in a lot of ways to make us more like zombies and connect us less. Now it's actually being demanded that we find insane levels of love and creativity to use this tool for extreme interconnectedness. And that's so fucking beautiful. And now I'm like, you know, bowing to the internet and feeling like, well, yeah, this is it. Like, it's gonna, how we can keep putting out versions of ourselves on the internet. But I feel like, I mean, even seeing you go through stuff and like plenty of people, I think in this humbling, we're realizing that, like, yeah, it's the intimacy of our hearts. It's actually like the places of not knowing, where we have to keep coming together more and more. And I feel like in many ways, the internet and social media, it's like a a extreme tool for knowing, like, I am doing this now. My Facebook post, I'm eating a sandwich, I'm taking a shit. It's like constant updates of who we are and how we're doing things. And but actually it's beginning to prove a lot of my stories wrong, that like, yeah, this is an amazing tool that can connect human beings all over the fucking world. And I see that happening deeply. And I love the fact that like cruise ships and airplanes, like a lot of the places where the earth has been so colonized, that's not really flying now in so many ways, you know?
Amazing. It's like probably one of the some of the most destructive things are like switched off, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, for me, like the idea of like we can run a training for people all over the world, and it's going to be the environmental cost is like, oh, their laptops will be switched on for the week, versus like everyone was going to fly halfway around the world from wherever they're from, this one place to do this thing, you know, and I'm building this model where, oh, we're going to fly our teachers around all over the world. And it just hit me of like, that's fucking dumb. You know, like that's really fucking dumb, which doesn't mean no one should travel, but it just revealed to me like this is not I've always assumed that was a necessary part. Well, why? Because I want to change consciousness. And it's like, if all you want to do is change consciousness, you can do that through the internet, which doesn't mean it's going to replace the other stuff, but it's almost like separating out, like, you know, and all these people, like, how many people have been driving to work every day for like 2 hours each way for like the last fucking however many decades? And it's just like, you work in an office. Like,
yeah,
that's been unnecessary for quite a long time for this person to get in their car, fucking get the thing, you put the petrol, drive the thing, sit in the traffic, get there to log into a fucking computer on the internet. It's like, how do we not notice that? And it's so those things are just, to me, marked improvements of efficiency. And I'm also like, I'm looking at like universities, really? You're all going to drive to this place to sit and listen to one person tell you some stuff who is maybe not that exciting anyway, when you could have just the one best person on that subject transmit to everyone. Like that seems like, you know, let's say this all switches off in December. It's not like we're all going to go back to the old way of doing things, you know?
Yeah. And also I feel when it comes to, and I know like this word is used a lot, like, you know, and a lot of our groups and things, but tension, like I love this word, and I've been obsessing over it. And in the in some of the esoterics, there's this amazing definition of tension where it's described as focused, immovable will. And she talks all about like, you know, this newer kind of tension that's actually not associated with like our nerves and stress, but I feel like it's like how much tension and stress is associated with like boarding a plane, getting the right seat, all these things, but our hearts and our bodies are not really collectively equipped to feel like the tension and the stress that it causes the planet. If the planet's a living being, when it comes to all these fossil fuels and all the fires happening around the world and all these things that are killing this planet. So I feel like if we actually start to feel what's going on in the planet, like we're consenting to almost like completely restructuring what our hearts are designed for, and like stretching levels of our sensitivity and our ability to feel in ways that like I still feel very disconnected from a lot of the times, you know. But when I'm around others who are tuning into that and calling in larger energies to really connect with this planet and relate to this planet, it changes the game. Like it changes moment to moment these reasons as to why we're here. And so I feel like it's, any ways that we hide as individuals. And I mean, I feel like I'm going through such a burning right now with this personally, of like, my ideal is to like press the red button and fast forward and jump ahead to this time when like all of us are just pouring out our cores and in the depths of our soul to each other constantly. And now realizing like, okay, what are the putting one foot in front of the other steps to get there, and like to keep, you know, I think there can be a lot of extreme ways of pushing those edges. And then there's like the ways of actually just continuing to say like, right, like, okay, in this inner battle, which foot is in the old world and which foot is in the new world. And I do feel that like that there must be some version of that in every person, you know, and whether it's longing, like what are the things in us that we know aren't working anymore, and where are there these really roads to the future where we feel like there's a little bit of us that's already in the new world. And I feel like that's the tension that's really bringing together groups of people, and at that those two poles getting shattered more and more to help like accelerating where we've actually you know, decelerated as a species over time.
Yeah, it's killer. Hey, I think it could be a good point to wrap up, you know. There's a few comments happening in the group. Maybe we'll just read them. Oh, this is a question. If I were to hold a circle, which I never have, my question would be how, or is there a way that it can be healthy or unhealthy? How would I set an intention to set up a space without controlling people's feelings and an openness to sharing and feeling safe? Do you want to have a go at that?
That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I feel like my best answer for that is to just try it, to just bring what would it look like to go in not having any idea of what it should look like, but to know that, you know, by you just showing up in a room and putting 10 or 20 chairs around and standing for a deeper level of intimacy between people, knowing that people might show up. I mean, I feel like magic happens when people sit in a circle, especially if people haven't done it much before. You know, I think we get, the more we do it, the more it becomes a blessing and a curse, you know? So I feel like, just going with a clear intention of wanting to deepen, wanting to find more threads and lines of connection in those invisible places between the hearts. How do you just go there and surrender to the mystery of what comes from it?
Yeah, love that. Yeah. Hey, if people are interested in you, how can they follow you or find you, or, you know, stalk you or whatever?
Yeah, they can. I mean, you can find me on Facebook for sure, and the link with this video, and my Instagram is called Aquarian Soulfire, which has been not that active in the last few months, but I'd say Facebook would be a good start. And super happy to know the rumblings and curiosities in people after this video. And I feel like we've touched on so many things here. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for doing this, man. It was nice and it's fun. I'm in my little house and you're in Hayden, so there's this kind of beauty of these things, these balances of these two sides, you know?
Yeah, it's good seeing you.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna wrap that up there. Thanks for listening, people. Please comment, share this, etc., and we'll see you on the next one.